I'll hand over to Liz to do some housekeeping. Liz.
Good morning. Many of you will be familiar with the format if you've come to a webinar before. So you won't be on video and you won't be able to unmute, but anything you ask, do let us know using the Q&A button. And if you have any connection issues or have to drop off the webinar, don't worry, we'll share the recording and the slides with you. The slides are already on our SharePoint link in our document library if you need to access them. And we're looking to change the format of our webinars going forward, so we will be able to see you in the future. So thanks for your feedback so far on this. Once the webinar is finished, please answer the pop-up question on your browser. This helps us improve our webinars. Next, please. For Q&As today, there's a button at the bottom of your screen or on the top if you're on a mobile. Don't rush to ask questions. We might answer it in our presentations. And just to say, the Q&A can get quite busy, so don't feel pressured to read and listen. We will have a break later on, so you're able to look at the questions that are on there and what you'd like to add at that point. If you're able to add in front of your question, either learning approach, learning activities, feedback, or monitoring, this really helps us answer your question in a good order. And please keep your questions to these topics. Any other questions, drop us an email. So we run through the questions at the end of the presentations. And if we can't answer them all, or you feel we haven't answered yours, drop us an email. We won't be circulating the Q&A today, I'm afraid. Next slide. We've sent you some documents over the last couple of months, and they're now stored on our SharePoint link, which I will make sure is in the chat for you. So this is an online document library you can access at any time. Any problems accessing it, just drop us an email and we might just have to make sure we've got the right email for you. And like I say, the recording and the slides will be there in coming days. That's it from me. Over to you, Louise. Thanks.
That's lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Liz. If we can have the next slide, please. So what's our agenda today and why are we doing this webinar? So what we've heard through our conversations with you that's participating in the pilot, and what we're hearing from the emails that we're receiving, is there is a little bit confusion about the learning activities. So what we wanted to give you an indication today is about the range of different learning activities that we've got up and coming. We wanted to let you know that not everybody will be invited to participate in each and every learning activity. So not to worry if you feel that you can get involved in every single one, and we'll give you an indication of what the different learning activities are and how you'll be invited. But also, if there's something you're really interested in getting involved with in terms of a learning activity, we've got a calendar to show you to let you know what's up and coming and what we want to learn, so that you can get involved in those particular learning activities when they come up at that point. What I just wanted to say, all our learning activities are really about the purpose of the pilot, and the purpose of the pilot is for us to understand what works and what doesn't work, and for what doesn't work, how can we put that right and make it work? And that's the purpose of the pilot. So learning is a really, really important part of our pilot and the activities that we do, because we want to learn from you about how you've approached things, what's worked and what hasn't, so that we can take that away and understand how we shape the new schemes going forward so they work for other farmers when we roll them out on a wider basis. I also wanted to say that we want to take a collaborative approach to learning activities, so that we know that you're participating in pilot as well as operating a farm business. We know there's going to be peaks and troughs for you, and there's going to be times when you can get involved and times when you can't, and that's completely fine. We want to take a collaborative approach to learning and what we're learning, but give you the opportunity when you want to feedback that you've got it there, and hopefully you'll get the idea of the different types of learning activities that we've got up and running. So I hope you enjoyed today's session and it answers some of the questions that you've got. I will be taking you through our pilot learning approach shortly. I'll then hand over to some of the members of the team who will introduce themselves when we hand over. We'll take you through our approach to learning activities. We'll take you through our learning calendar, what we're going to do when, and we're going to take you through how we're going to monitor learning activities. What we're going to then do is have a short break for 5 minutes. So what we've heard previously is it's really hard to keep track of the questions and listen to the speakers at the same time. So what we're going to do is give you a short break. So if you've got any questions that you don't feel have been answered, you can pop them in the Q&A and then we'll come back for approximately 20 minutes and answer some of those questions, and the team have joined me to answer your questions today. So hopefully, we hope that the webinar is going to last around an hour. So hopefully you've got all got that time planned in your diary. So if we can have the next slide, please. So I just wanted to give you an indication of our learning approach. What are we seeking to learn from the pilots? I've already said that we're seeking to learn what works and what doesn't, but what are the types of things that we're seeking to learn? So I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the elements that's behind what we're seeking to learn in our pilots. I've got a few slides I want to take you through that I think will help you understand some of the learning activities that we've got up and coming. So if I can have the next slide, please. So what will we learn from the pilot? We're seeking to learn several things. The first is, does the scheme work for farmers? The second is the scheme easy to deliver from an administrative point of view? And thirdly, the third pillar is, will the scheme deliver the environmental benefits we're seeking to deliver? And underneath those three broad headings, we've got 7 building blocks in which we're seeking to learn, and we've set them out on the slide. I won't go through every single one of them, but just to give you an indication. So the land management building block is a really big block of what we're seeking to learn in the pilot. We're trying to understand about the standards, how easy are they to apply and implement? Is there enough guidance on what you're seeking to do, and is it clear what you're seeking to do? And if you implement them, do they produce the results that we're hoping that they would produce? We're also testing land management planning as part of that land management building block, and how you may use a land management plan to plan and deliver the environmental benefits that you deliver across your holding. And that may be part of the sustainable farming incentive pilot, but it also may be part of countryside stewardship. We're also testing payments. So are they set at the right level to encourage you to actually take up and deliver the standard? So I hope that gives you a little bit of a flavour of some of the things that we're trying to test. Obviously 7 blocks there, and they set out our framework for what we're seeking to learn through the pilot. If we can have the next slide, please. So what does that look like when we do a learning activity? So I just wanted to take you through this because I think this will give you an indication of, when we're doing these learning activities, what actually is it going to lead to? How is it going to help DEFRA make change? So we take those building blocks that we've got as part of the learning strategy, and we will build learning activities. So for example, the entry survey that will give us lots and lots of data and information about the people in the pilot and of you that's in the pilot and what you're delivering as part of the pilot. That will help us generate lots of data that we can then synthesize and bring together to understand who's in the pilot, what's working, what type of standards different farms are applying for. We then amalgamate that learning, and that learning is shared with our policy teams that's responsible for the design of the new schemes. So we will be sharing our learning widely within the department. So obviously this is a sustainable farming incentive pilot. We have a very close working relationship with that policy team, but I don't want you to think we just share our learning with that team. We share it widely across the department so we can build our learning into the other schemes that we're building, such as the local nature recovery scheme. For policy teams then feed back to us to let us know how they've used that evidence. We apply that learning and then we share it with you to say, this is what we heard from you and this is what we've done as a result of that change. And I think the next slide sets that out quite neatly. So if we can have the next slide, please. So and this is what to expect as part of that process. So you've got the learning. How does that turn it into change? So we'll combine the learning from a range of different sources. So it might not just be the entry survey, it might be a workshop that we've run with 10 to 15 of you that's in the pilot to dig a bit deeper into some of the issues, for example, on a particular standard. We'll bring that learning together and that'll feed into scheme development and delivery and lead to change in several different ways. And this slide just gives you an indication of the range of those changes. So a change might be a direct change to policy. So we may change a standard, for example, if it's not working. It may influence the direction of policy. So we've got that is already happening with your experience of the application and the agreement process. It's helping us develop and the rollout of the sustainable farming scheme later this year and what that looks like and help us improve the processes. We hope that it helps have an impact on how you work together as a group of farmers and how that comes together to help improve processes and say, this is what we've done as part of the pilot. We've generated these networks of farmers. And I think the other thing that it tells us is it tells us what we need to learn. So if there is a standard, for example, that isn't working, it tells us there may be more learning we need to do to dig into that a little bit deeper to understand, is that in a particular sector or for a particular type of farmer where it isn't working, or is it not working as a whole? We plan to regularly feed back to you as we progress through the pilot about how we're making those changes and where we're making those changes. But I hope that's just a helpful indication of the types of things that we're looking to learn, the process that we go through, and how the learning that we do will result in change. So if we can have the next slide, please. I just mentioned in terms of feedback and that we will feed back our learning to you. And there's a few different ways in which we do that and what you should look out for. So we have our monthly newsletters. You should have received one earlier this week. I hope you're finding those useful. Please do let us know. They're about telling you about what's happening, letting you know some of the learning activities, but also about feeding back. We've now got our site up and running where we hold all the documents for the pilot, and what we'll be doing is sharing some of the reports on the back of that learning. So if you want to look in detail at the reports, there will be an opportunity for you to do that. We'll be hosting more feedback webinars, a bit like what we've done today, but we hopefully want them to be a bit more interactive in the future, where we'll let you know as a result of some of the learning activities, how that's led to change. And what we're very much hoping to do in the near future is face-to-face events. Now, these may be events at venues, or it may be on-farm events where we come together and say, this is the learning and this is what we've done with the learning. And again, something that I'd highly recommend is that we do, thank you to those of you that have already done some videos and blogs for us. I think they're really engaging, and we'll be doing more of those going forward. We've had some really good feedback on the blogs that we've got in place. We can pop in the link to the blog so everybody can sign up. So in terms of feedback coming up, what have we got? So thank you to those of you that have participated in the land management planning webinar. So those results will be coming out shortly. And as we know, we've got the entry survey that's live at the moment. When that closes, we'll be doing the analysis and bringing you some of the results of that entry survey. So can we have the next slide, please? So what I'd like to do now is just tell you a little bit about monitoring and about what we said around the learning taking up to 15 hours of your time. So if I hand over to Liz. Liz.
Thank you. So as a pilot participant, you receive a payment for the time that you spend on the learning activities. This could be up to 15 hours per month, as Louise has said. If we notice that you are not engaging with the learning activities you are invited to, then we will be in touch to find out why and to offer support. If for any reason you are unable to complete a learning activity, then you should let us know at the earliest opportunity via the SFI pilot inbox. We will monitor your participation in the learning activities by checking that you have completed the surveys that we send to you and recording your attendance at workshops and events that you have been invited to. Our approach to monitoring is collaborative and supportive, and we aim to demonstrate engagement with activities whilst providing support when and where it is needed. Okay, I'll now hand you over to my colleague Russ, who will take you through the types of learning activities you may be involved with. Yes.
Thank you, Liz. Good morning, everyone. Yes, so my name is Russ Money and I work in the DEFRA Pilot Learning Service, and I'm going to take you through a bit more information on the different types of learning activities. So, Michael, if I could have the next slide, please. So, firstly, what do we mean really by learning activities? Well, as Louise alluded to earlier, what we really mean are activities that will help us here at DEFRA learn from you and your experience of grappling with the pilot. And we're going to undertake that learning using a variety of different approaches, which we've got listed in this table. Now, some of these will already be familiar to you, but I will briefly run through some of them in some more detail in some following slides. But before I do, I'll just point out that I won't say anything more on land management plans. That's the second one on the list in the table there, because I know we've already had some sessions recently on that subject. And I just wanted to draw your attention to a couple towards the bottom of the list. One of those was face-to-face events. Now, Louise mentioned those. This is very much a work in progress, but we are determined to get out to see you. Much of the activity listed in this table is remote. We do it via online webinars, workshops and surveys, but we do intend to develop some face-to-face opportunities. We're looking at the possibility of some regional events, but also some opportunities for small group events out on farm. So watch this space for more information on that. And I'll also just highlight the online community, the last one on the list there, which we've newly introduced. It's growing, so membership of that is growing, which is great to see. Now, it's not compulsory for you to get involved in that. We realize it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it is a good opportunity for you to share knowledge and experience with each other, and there are some good conversations happening on there already, and so we would encourage you to get involved in that if you can. So I'm going to run through a few of the other activities now in just a little bit more detail. So could I have the next slide, please, Michael? So journals, what to expect from journals. Well, we have covered some of this in some previous sessions, but it is important just to reiterate a few key points. It is a fundamental part of our whole approach to learning in the pilot, because it's a way that we can capture your experiences and your ideas as you're going along. That's the critical thing, as it's happening, as you're thinking about it, as you're experiencing it. It provides a record then, that you can draw on when contributing to the different activities like responding to surveys or taking part in workshops. Now, we may ask to see your journal. For example, if you receive a site visit for agreement monitoring purposes, you will be expected to be able to show that you do have a journal. Now, the Learning Journal guidance is available. We've provided that to you already, and I think the link in the chat that my colleague Liz has provided will point you in the right direction. But if you have any queries about learning journals, please do just get in touch with us. So could I have the next slide, please, Michael? Thank you. Surveys and workshops. So first of all, let's deal with surveys. Some surveys will be sent to everyone. Others will be targeted at particular groups where they're particularly theme-based, or we're interested in particular types of farm or particular groups of standards. Now, if you receive a survey, then you are expected to complete it, but we will aim to provide a good length of time for you to complete the survey, and you can always complete it in stages. You can do a bit, save it, and come back to it. If you have any difficulties with completing surveys, please, again, just let us know. Now, it's really important to say that not all surveys will be like the entry survey that you've recently been grappling with. Now, that was a special case because we needed to establish a detailed baseline for the pilot community from the start. We would only expect to issue a survey really of that size, perhaps once a year. So in general, the surveys that we send you will be much shorter and much more focused and much quicker for you to complete. So please don't be put off by the entry survey. Now, we also know that we encountered some problems, some technical issues with the entry survey, and some emails with incorrect information what was sent out, and that's caused some anxiety and confusion. So we can only apologize again for that. Hopefully we have put that right. We've learned from it, and we will ensure that that doesn't happen again. So that's surveys, workshops, and one-to-one interviews as well. So we will run a series of workshops and rounds of one-to-one interviews throughout the year. And these will tend to be focused on specific themes. So for example, it may be on a particular standard, or it may be on your experience of the agreements process and securing your agreement. We will send out invitations, but they won't go to everyone. They will tend to involve small groups, typically 15 to 20 farmers at a time. Now, we expect that sometimes, or we understand that sometimes you will receive an invite to something, but the timing just doesn't really work for you. Or you may respond positively to an invitation, but in the end are not actually selected for that activity because the numbers are limited. So we really want to stress that you shouldn't worry on either count, because our aim is to provide multiple opportunities for everyone through the year to get a chance to contribute in this way at some point. Next slide, I think, Michael, please. So we do have some, well, two really main key partners that will be helping us to carry out the studies during the pilot. And we thought it was important just to make you aware, as you may have had contact with them or may have contact with them in future, in addition to the direct contact that you have from us here at DEFRA. So they are ICF, which is a research consultancy organization. They will help us undertake some of the learning activities. ICF work with farmers on a regular basis. They've been very involved in the test and trials program over a number of years. ICF sent you the entry survey, and they will also be helping us to collate and analyze the results. And some of you may have had invitations from ICF to contribute to a round of one-to-one interviews that are coming up shortly. The second key partner is the University of Sheffield. So researchers at Sheffield are working with DEFRA to make it easier really for farmers to get engaged and take part in the design of policies relating to agriculture and the environment. And they'll be working with pilot farmers on both a one-to-one and a small group basis out on the farm. That's the plan, to capture your experience and feedback in a different way. If there are ever any doubts about who is contacting you, then please just let us know. If you have any concerns or you don't recognize a particular email address. Okay, Michael, the next slide, please. I think this is really my final slide to give you an indication of what's coming up. So this calendar gives you an idea of how we intend to phase the different themes that we'll be studying through the year and applying the types of activities that we've just been describing, the workshops and the surveys, etc. But it's important to say it's not set in stone, but there is a sort of logic to it, going from left to right, with early work on agreements coming earlier on in the year, then moving into a bigger body of work around the standards and the implementation of the standards, which will also include consideration of the payment rates and the guidance attached to the standards. And then moving through to looking at amendments processes and monitoring and compliance elements coming later in the year. And you will notice as well that journals and land management plans remain a bit of a theme really throughout the year. But we recognize that we do need to stay flexible. You can see there are blank slots in this calendar labeled simply study. And this is because we know that priorities will change and new priorities will emerge as we learn and respond to your feedback. And we also need to make space to revisit some of these themes as well. It does re-emphasize again the importance of the journals, because they act as a bit of a holding pen, if you like, for your experience and knowledge, so that you can feed that in at the right time when we're running activities on a relevant theme. So that's all the slides from me. Thank you for listening. Could you just pop the next slide on, Michael? So what we're going to do now is have a short break, a 5-minute break, which is really just an opportunity for you to take stock of the Q&A and also a bit of time to reflect and to add in some questions of your own. Just a plea to try and preface your questions if possible, using a term such as approach or activities or monitoring or feedback, as we've got listed on the slide there. That just helps us to sort and manage the Q&A as the questions come in. That's it from me, thank you.
Hi Russ, just to chip in, we do have some questions coming through on the chat, and I don't want you to have to be looking through both lists. We have the Q&A button, which might be easier, and we'll order the questions. So if you could add any questions that you'd like us to answer in the Q&A, that would be great. I'm doing my best to answer the chat, but I don't want you to get confused with all the screens going on. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks, Liz. And thank you very much indeed, Russ. I'll do my best to chair the Q&A in 5 minutes. So please do take the time to read the questions that's already in there, see if your question's been answered. If not, please do pop it in and I'll try my best to cover the questions that have already been put in the chat. So if we'll come back about 25 to 11. Thanks, everybody. Hello, everybody. We've had around 5 minutes. I hope that's given you the opportunity to have a look at the questions that we've got in the Q&A. And just to have a read through them, both the open ones, and you'll see there's some answered ones already. What we'll try and do now is answer some of those questions that we've got in the Q&A that we hope will be really useful to everybody. So I'm going to bring in the team to answer some of those questions that you've got, so you just won't be hearing from me. So some of the questions that we've got. So we've got a question on the community, and it'd be helpful to have a description and commentary of the community. And this is the pilot site. So hopefully now everybody should have been invited to the site, the team site. So this site is for everybody that's involved in the pilot. So you can, if you're the agreement holder, you'll be invited, and you can nominate one other if you want to do so to come along to the community. So it works as a forum. It's a forum for the purpose is to bring people together that's delivering on the pilot. You will see when you enter the online community that we have set it up so that you can talk. There's different spaces for you to chat about the different standards, but it's also based on your feedback about what you want to get out of the community. So we've heard as well that people would like to link up with others in their local areas through the community about what's being delivered. So please do let us know if that's something that you'd like to see as part of the community. So the purpose of the community is really for you to engage together. There may be some questions to share your experience in the pilot of what works and what doesn't work. So I hope that's helpful in clarifying what we're trying to do through the online community. Liz Harding-Wyatt, Sam, is there anything you wanted to add to that on the online community?
No, it's fine, Louise, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Louise. No, I think it was just to say that we know that it sort of takes a while for people to get to sort of get more sort of comfortable with using that and get on. But really, it is a place for you to sort of talk between yourselves and help and discuss and bring up issues that you think might be relevant, or that are relevant, say, on your application, how that's going, and that you think might be relevant to others. So we do want it to be your space. So obviously we've put together some sort of expected sort of code of conduct and sort of how it should operate, but we want it to be your your space, and for you to sort of get to know each other and what you're doing, and feedback good things as well as things that you've got more concerns with. So it really is your site, and we're there obviously to manage it and keep an eye on it for you. But as a community of our sort of participants, this is your space to share that and to be in touch with each other.
Thanks, Sam. And please do tell us your experience of the online community, what's working for you and what isn't working for you. We know when I last checked, we've probably got up to a third of the people that's involved, the farmers in the pilot, that are signed up to the online community, and it is being actively used. So please do let us know how you're finding that and whether you are finding it useful. So we've got questions asking for links to the SharePoint site where we're going to store all the documents related to the pilot, so you're not depending on all the emails that we may be sending you. There is going to be a central area where you can just go and access it, so we'll make sure that we send that out to everybody. I think Liz has put a link in the chat, but we will make sure you've got that. I think it was also in the newsletter. Liz?
That's what I was just going to say, Louise. Yeah, check your emails for the newsletter, and there'll be lots of information in there for you. But I'm responding as quickly as I can with some links.
Great. We had a great question on the learning calendar from John around the schedule showed us our focus areas. John, this is a really good question, and we went through several ways of showing you the learning calendar, and we were trying to show you the different learning activities that we might have under each of the learning activities, but it got quite messy and I felt quite difficult to understand. So what we wanted to give you with the learning calendar was a flavour of the focus areas that's coming up. For each focus area, there will be a mix of different activities. So for example, we may have for some of the activities that's coming up looking at the standards, we will be inviting farmers to small workshops and one-to-one interviews to have a look at that. So obviously that won't be everybody that's involved in the pilot, but it will be some people that have said they want to get involved and they want to help us. However, as part of all of the focus areas that we're doing, we recognise we don't want to take the views of a small number that we'll have working in workshops. So we will be looking to those the feedback that we get and the learning that we get. We will be doing some validation of that learning with a wider pilot group. Now, that can take several forms. It might be via a survey, for example, that we're asking you to fill in, or hopefully we're trying to move to more where we'll have face-to-face events, our regional events, and we'll be telling you about what we found and if you agree with some of those findings, so we can see if those findings that we've found through those focus areas apply, and that those workshops that's been involved also apply to a wider group of farmers in the pilot. So I hope that helps and helps explain what we're doing and what we try to do through the learning activities calendar. Russ, Charlie, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Thanks, Louise. Just to clarify, John, that no, those labels in the boxes on the calendar don't imply any new standards. But what we are likely to be doing is, looking at some of these issues in combination. So sometimes, you'll understand it's difficult to disentangle, for example, people's experiences of the hedgerow standard alongside perhaps the improved grassland or arable standard. So sometimes there are opportunities to look at some of these things together as well as separately, and I think that perhaps causes a little bit of the confusion in the labelling there, but that's the intention. So I hope that clarifies that.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Russ. We've got another similar question regarding workshops, and we did say that there are likely to be small number of you invited to some of the workshops, just because we want to take all the views on board, and if people are interested, can they join? And I hope I've answered that in that workshops will involve a small number of people, but what we're looking to do is bring those results to a wider group of people so we can confirm if they're right. So you may not be invited to the workshop itself, but you will get an opportunity to feed into the results to say, well, yes, I agree with that, or no, that isn't what happened to me, and I don't think that's quite right. So you will have that wider opportunity, hopefully. And equally, we wanted to do workshops because we recognise that not all of you are able to participate in everything all of the time. We know that you've got a busy farming calendar, and we didn't want to put on lots and lots of workshops that's going to take you away from your main farm business. It's a real fine balance for you that we hope we're getting right, but if we're not, please do let us know. So just having a look through, we've got lots of feedback on the standards and people looking for clarification on the delivery of the standards. And what I'd really say is that we are learning about how to deliver the standards. So if it's really not clear what you should be doing, please do write that in your learning journal. This is a pilot, and the purpose of it is for us to learn what works and what doesn't. And if you are confused and the thing's not working, obviously the standards aren't working, so we need to address that. But please don't worry about what answering questions, what we will try and do is we'll collect all the queries that we get in around the implementation of the standards. But if you note down in your learning journal about what's been unclear, what you've done as a result of it not being clear, and we'll consider that as part of the focus areas when we look at some of the standards that we're delivering coming up. And I hope the calendar gave you an indication of the standards that's coming up and what we want to deliver across those. Just having a look, so we've got some useful feedback on understanding communication if you create a diagrammatic interpretation of each standard. So Vicky, that's really helpful feedback that we've heard before. We have shared that with the policy team in setting out a picture of how each of the standards might work, or even a checklist. So we've took that back to the policy team, and the policy team are actively looking at its feedback that we've heard from a number of different sources. So thanks for that, Vicky, that is really helpful. I can see some of you feel as though you've been going round in circles with some of your communication, and I can only apologise for that. I am really sorry. If you do email us at the SFI Pilot Learning email address, if you feel that your question hasn't been answered either by us or RPA, please do email us, and we'll make it our priority to have a look at those and to get to answer those. Some of the questions do take us a little bit of time to look into it and to get you back an answer, but we do try and respond to everybody. Liz, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that. Liz Harding-Wade.
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. Yeah, that's exactly right. We are specialists in the learning activities as well, more so than any standards questions or something to do with capital items grants. So in some cases, we have to forward your email on to the experts. So sometimes it does take a little bit of time. So we're doing our best to reply, as Louise says.
Thanks, Liz. We've got questions on, we've got a comment on the learning journal, and what it would be really useful if it was online and you could log on and you could update it. So that's really useful feedback. Thank you for that. We've heard a variety of different feedback around the learning journal. Lots of people like to write in a written journal. Some people like it to do it on the phone, and some people like to do it on the computer. We didn't want to be too prescriptive about it. We wanted people to use something that works for them. So for example, we didn't want to say, please do write it online and have an online journal if people would prefer to write that in a diary. But do let us know your experiences and about what works for you in terms of the learning journal. We're keen to hear of your experience, and I'm sure there's some threads on the online community about the learning journal and sharing your experience of what you're doing. So please do keep on continuing to feedback your experience in there, and these are ideas that we will look at in the future for the future. Just having a look to see if there's quite a few questions that's not on the learning that if we have time I will try and address some of those, but I'm just having a look to see.
Yeah,
so
Louise, we've had a question from Tracy. We might have answered it, but maybe we just need to go over it again about getting involved with questions, with workshops that you might be more interested in than others if you can request to join. And I know you mentioned that, you know, we can't unfortunately accommodate everyone, but we do try and contact everyone to get their input to us with the survey. Does that sound right?
Yeah, Liz, and I hope that answers everybody's question. I think I hear some concern that we won't get everybody's feedback, and what we are really trying to do is get everybody's feedback. So we will have workshops and one-to-one interviews. Unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to do one-to-one interviews and workshops with everybody that's in the pilot, but we will be coming out with the feedback from those workshops and those interviews so that you will have the opportunity. If you're not selected for a one-to-one interview or for a workshop, there will be the opportunity for you to feedback. So I hope that's helpful, and I hope that answers your question, Tracy, but please do let us know in the Q&A if it doesn't, and I'll try and answer it. We have a question here on the entry survey and when people need to complete that by. Russ, Charlie, I don't know whether you want to take that one.
Yeah, I'll ask Charlie if that's okay, just to confirm that.
Thanks, Russ.
Yeah,
Charlie.
yeah, that's fine. So you will, when you receive the link, it will tell you what your deadline is. The first deadline coming up is Monday, the 21st. And if you received a link after in March, it will be the 4th of April. So if your agreement went live in March, it'll be the 4th of April. If your agreement was already live in February, it'll be Monday. So just check your emails with the SFI survey from ICF, and that'll make sure the deadline will be in there, and there'll be reminders coming out as well.
That's great. Thanks, Charlie. Charlie, we've got another question here. There's a couple of people asking whether the survey can be printed off. Could you answer that one, please?
It would be very hard for you to print off because the way it links. So it wouldn't be able to be print off. It's much better for you to do it online. It's much more user friendly. If you are struggling to complete it though, please let us know. Email the SFI pilot inbox and we can talk you through some various different things that we can do to help.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Charlie. So I think the message there is, unfortunately, it can't be printed off, but if you are experiencing issues, please do get in touch with us. I hope that helps. Other questions that we may have about learning. So we've got, Liz, is there any other questions that you can see that we haven't answered? Just while Liz, sorry, Liz, just I'll let you scan, Liz. I just did want to broach, there is a couple of you letting us know that you did receive the incorrect link for the survey, which Russ mentioned in his presentation, and I please do accept my sincere apologies for that. That was an error on our part. Unfortunately, we did send the wrong email to different people. I do apologise. These things happen when we've got so many people in the pilot. We've made sure that we've put processes in as a team that this will not happen again. But everybody now should have the right link. We sent you an email if this did affect you, and we have sent you the right link. So again, please accept my apologies, and I hope it's clear now and you've got the link. If you haven't, please do let us know. Liz, sorry to cut you off. Was there any questions we haven't quite answered yet?
No, it's fine. Thanks, Louise. There are some questions about capital grant items funding. Those questions might best go to the RPA email, which is ruralpayments@defra.gov.uk, and I'll pop that in the chat or respond to your question with those, just to mention that.
Thanks, Liz. Is there any other questions in terms of learning activities that it would be useful for people to answer? So we've got a question around, so these are just questions that have already been answered, but there is a question around why is the Q&A not being published from today? So we've had feedback, and lots of feedback, that you don't particularly find Q&As very useful. You find them very long documents. You've got a heavy workload on your farms already, and then reading another Q&A just adds to the burden, and we didn't want to add to that. We felt that by having an interactive session today where we answer as many of your questions as we can on learning activities would be really helpful. It's something that we've recorded so that you can listen back again to hear some of the answers to those questions. But if that's not the case and you would like a document, please do let us know. But by far at the moment, the overwhelming message that we've heard is people don't want more lengthy Q&As to read, but do let us know. Thank you. Hopefully we should we should have the right email addresses for you. We know we've gone through a process of getting the right, making sure we've got the right email contact for the learning activities. So again, if we haven't got that right, and you're not receiving some of the learning activities, everybody, the majority of people in the pilot have got a live agreement should now have received the entry survey. So if you haven't, please do let us know. Again, similarly, if you haven't been invited to join the online community, I think that's gone out to everybody that's in the pilot now. So if you haven't, please do let us know, and we will make sure that we get that invitation over to you, and we can get that on the community. We can get you on the community as quickly as possible. Liz, Sam, any other questions on the learning activities before we close?
I think, I mean, we've got lots of questions, Louise, and some really good feedback. And I just wanted to mention that even putting some of this stuff in is all helping us with feedback, because we're seeing the sorts of things that you're raising. We are taking these things on board, and we're looking at how we can improve or change our systems to sort of take into account. And also we realise that we're quite early in the journey, so lots of you are now sort of live with your agreements and starting to do things, and some of these queries that are coming up are things that that we know will come up as we start and we get settled in. So it was sort of a thank you for raising them, as well as putting them on here. In terms of actual we have had one just come in about just about the webinars. Oh, I see Liz has just replied while we've been talking. So about videos, and we want it to be flexible, so we want to do what works for you, really. And if you want we want to make sure that we're visible to you, but if you don't want to be visible, then that's absolutely fine. It's the best way round. It's just making sure that we can make the most out of our time working with you in the pilot. So I don't think we've got any other specific questions on learning. There's lots, and we're trying. The team is sort of actively getting through, trying to answer as many of these for you as well while we're going through.
And just to say, Sam, if we have missed your question, do drop us an email, and we will make sure that we answer it for you.
That's lovely, thank you. Just before we go, we do have a couple of questions about people worried that they may miss something, particularly due to illness. Please don't worry. I think hopefully what Liz Howe came on and said about how we're monitoring, if we notice that people aren't participating in learning activities, we will be getting in touch with you. We are taking a collaborative approach, so you will have the opportunity to let us know if there's a reason for you not being engaged. So please don't worry. I can see there are questions that we haven't covered today on capital grants and on payments. We will take those questions back to the RPA, and we will have a look at those questions for you. So I know some of you submitted questions about when you're getting paid, and the payments amounts, and also a question on capital items. We did have a webinar earlier this month on capital items and payments, so we can circulate that link again if that would be helpful, but we'll make sure that these questions are tucked away. But as Sam said, all your feedback is great learning for us today, so please don't feel as though your learning's going into a big black hole, because it isn't. All this is really valuable feedback that we are collating as part of our learning for the pilot. And again, as Sam said, I just wanted to reiterate, thank you very much for bearing with us. That we've had some teething problems, but we are learning as we go, and what works for you and what doesn't. So please do let us know what you'd like to see in the future, what works well for you. Well, I think that's everything for today. I'd just like to say thank you very much for all of you for taking the time to join us. I hope you found it useful, and we've answered some of your questions on the learning approach. I'd like to say thank you very much to the DEFRA team and to the Rural Payments Agency that have came along today and helped me answer some of your questions. There will be a quick survey in your browser when the webinar closes. Please do make the time just to give us some quick feedback, because that helps us improve on our approach. And do take a look at our opportunity to join our online community, our forum that we've got for farmers in the pilot, because we really look forward to looking at your questions and your comments that you've made. And I mentioned our blog earlier as well, which has got some great articles on it, not just about the pilot, but about more wider what's going on in DEFRA and in future farming. So please do take a look at the blog. It's a great read and sign up. Thanks everybody, and thanks for your time.